What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Another special episode. It's not just myself. We have another guest today. I am joined by my man, Pete's Flips, who I actually had the opportunity to meet in person a couple weeks ago over at ASD in Vegas. So happy to have this conversation. What's going on, Pete?
Oh, it's going well. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Garrett. I'm really excited for it.
So the one thing I really kind of want to dig into with you is your growth, right? Because
Yeah.
that's going to be a pretty big bottleneck for a lot of people getting going, right? They're maybe at the 10, 20,000, 30,000 a month, and they really can't hit that next level, really can't hit that next threshold. And so I think that's one area where we can really dig into today to kind of give the audience a little bit of perspective in terms of like what it takes to take the top off, what it takes to hit that first $100,000 month. So to kind of set the stage for the conversation, can you give us some perspective into like your path? Give us kind of breakdown of what the past, call it 12 months of numbers looked like, and we'll kind of go going from there.
Yeah. So over the last 12 months, I would say up until the last 4 or 5, it was under 10K, like
Mhm.
consistently. I had been in like a bolo group, which is like a good place to learn, get familiar with concepts, get familiar with products. You might be able to network. But I wasn't going deep on really good products, and I didn't like discover a niche. And over time, after doing some coaching and creating a group of people that I talk to every day, that knowledge just began to compound. And so really developed that confidence to go a lot deeper on really good, fast moving products that then allowed me to reinvest and then scale, quite a bit. So it was like last 12 months, it was like under 10K starting in probably April or May. We hit like 20, 60, and then this month I'll be at 130.
So you actually, and for everyone that doesn't follow Pete on Twitter, it's Pete's Flips, right? As spelled as,
Yep.
you posted an interesting screenshot of your sales breakdown, right? And it was pretty flat, kind of depicting what you're talking about. And then again, 3 or 4 months ago. So where it was sort of like that plateau at that 10, 15K, what did that look like? What was the action that was going into there, right? Because something I talk about a bunch is in this business specifically, input equals output, right? You drive what you will see as your output with your spend. And
Yep.
so over that span of 8 to 10 months where you didn't really see much growth, what was
Yep.
right? What was the input? What was going into the business at that point?
Yeah. So I was probably right as I was about to grow. Like at the very beginning, I was probably like 5 to 6 a month, and then it went to 20. And then when you really start to see that growth, I just started going a lot deeper and probably around like
Right.
60, 70K. And that's on a monthly basis. So like you just escalate each time, and then you just see the graphs, kind of do the same.
So you talk about kind of one of the competitive advantages, I guess you could say, that you experienced was the confidence to be able to go deeper. And so I imagine that confidence kind of happens organically different, right? And so how were you able to establish that confidence and really the comfortability with the data that you're looking in to be able to not buy 5, buy 50, right? Not buy 50, buy 150, right? How did that kind of happen?
Yeah, so it's super simple. Like if you think about it, where I started, by doing some educational courses, which really, influenced my ability to read the graphs, understand the data, and then went wide to start. Probably orders of 10 to 20, and then saw what worked, saw what didn't, and then like kind of learned that the best products are going to be the ones that carry the weight. And so what you want to go ahead and do is like when you have a really good opportunity, take full advantage of it. So we talk about squeezing quite a bit. That's, squeeze the bag on that situation.
Yeah. And in terms of like sort of the analytical process, do you really kind of pinpoint big differences in terms of how you looked at products, maybe the specific data points, the points of interest that you were looking at in those first couple months compared to now? Like how
Yes.
has that evolved?
Yeah, 100%. So when I was first looking at products, I would be really looking at that sales rank. And then I would be diving into variations, that sort of thing. But what I've done more lately is looking at offer count. So understanding, are people selling that product, or is that variation is
Hey, quick commercial break. I appreciate you guys supporting and following the channel. If you are enjoying this particular video, which I'm assuming you are if you're still watching it to this point, make sure you subscribe to the channel, scroll down, hit that subscribe button. Helps me out, helps the channel out. Let's get back to the content.
slow moving product on a great listing? And so getting away from those products and then really leveraging on the ones that you see those very quick changes in offer count has been something that's really changed things for me.
Yeah, and in terms of now, how are you really continuing to drive forward, continuing to source, and continuing to increase that spend? Like, what sorts of ways are you finding new products, that sort of thing?
Yeah. So um, over the last couple months, you kind of find websites that really work for you. You find products that work for you. So understanding those schedules and when they'll be available at really competitive prices has been something that has started to take place in my business. So yeah, it's just understanding when they're going to becoming available, replenning them if it's a replen, and just knowing when the good sales are going to be coming. And that's kind of how I've gone about it.
And so the past couple months, has it been primarily back to school related merchant fulfill?
I would say that that's represented, roughly like 60 to 70% of the last month for sure. Yeah. So I'm now like looking into like more long term for the next month, kind of preparing for Q4. And we're just kind of gearing up. So I expect next month will be a little slower, which is normal. And then we'll just kind of blow the top off, November, December.
Yeah, and then kind of getting a little bit tactically, the one thing I've been telling a lot of people recently is even if you weren't able to take advantage monetarily of the whole back to school crave, you could still benefit, right? And what I mean by that is if you go and start to analyze and really pick apart some of those listings that a lot of people were very clearly making a lot of money on, there's a wealth of information in there. Granted, you weren't one of those people that were making tons of money, but the value of the information that that listing then provides is invaluable, right? And that will continue to pay dividends over the next 4 or 6 months, right? And so what we can do, and you can kind of add your twist on it after, is you can pick apart the 10, 15, 50 sellers that were really selling that listing heavy over the past month, right? And
Yep.
now you have essentially a reservoir of information where any single time they add a product, and now you can reverse engineer where they found it, right? And granted, every single one of those isn't going to hit, but if you have a database of 50, 60, 70, 100 smart sellers, well, the amount of warm product information, the amount of warm leads there is undeniably going to lead you at some point to something successful.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I have, in my Google, I've just got a list of sellers that I know are large scale OA operations. And so if I'm struggling for inspiration, I'll just tap into them. Yeah.
Yeah, and the like the kind of the mechanism of reverse engineering those products, right? Something I talk about a bunch is qualifying quickly and worrying about the profit, worrying about the cost on the back end, right? So if we can initially qualify based on all the real metrics and qualitative factors in the beginning, competition, Amazon in stock, the actual trending of the product, price point, right? All these things. Well, if we can qualify all that, and the same holds true when we talk about wholesale, if we can just then map it back to a source, then half the job is done, right? We could always try and knock off a couple dollars of that price point, right? This is something that Miles talks about really well in his content, is manufacturing that extra margin, right? But if we can start with that product information, qualify it, and then map it back to the source, that's always going to be faster than going to the site where we have none of that information privy, right? We can go to Kohl's or Dick's Sporting Goods and go through all that product information. But the problem is it's hard to qualify because we have to map every single one of those products back to Amazon. We don't know price point. We don't know buy box. We don't know trending. We don't know competition. We don't know any of that stuff, you know?
Yep. 100%. Yeah. I mean, the whole name of the game here is moving quickly so that you can continue to buy more products. And so you get more data, sentimental data on each one of those. And then you're allowing OA to move very quickly because you have that kind of that database in your head of like the different type of products that are going to sell well.
Was there any point in that kind of first 8 months that you were contemplating giving up on Amazon? Just be like, this isn't really for me. This isn't working. This.
No, not really. I think I just really wanted it to work. I've worked a 9 to 5 for a while, and I talk about this on my content a little bit. But it's very difficult to do things that you're not inclined to do, and 9 to 5 is not the move for
Right.
me. And so I've been kind of treading water there, and I wanted a space where I knew that I could bring that passion, that energy into, so I could blow it out of the water. And this is a space where I knew that if I just stayed persistent, I would be able to get there. And then you toss in having a support system with like-minded people, and then there's really no going back.
So were you that first initial period, were you tapped into the social media space at all?
So I probably tapped into social media around February or March because I started listening to the Buy Box Bandits maybe in January. And I heard like subtle references to money Twitter. I created my, Twitter, profile, and then I started, networking with everybody around that time.
But there was a period where you were just kind of like observing like
Oh,
blindly,
yeah.
and then you started to exist at some point.
Yeah, 100%. I think that when I started making videos is when you really see the
Hmm.
uh the profile start to become valuable.
Take shape. Yeah.
You get really good feedback, people engage with you. You get little nuggets from people here and there. But the videos are huge. Like it's doing something that other people are unwilling to do, and it differentiates you.
Yeah, and so I mean, granted, at this point, right, we're in late August. It's very cliche to say, "Oh, post content, it's gonna be valuable." But how do you kind of frame it for the person that's watching this that has never showed their face, hasn't put out a piece of content, is trying to get to that next level? How do you kind of put it into perspective for them to be like, "All right, well, you should do this, but now you need if this is serious, this is how it's going to take it to the next level."
Yeah, so I think that highlighting the reward, if you look at all of the people that do post content, if you look at yourself, if you look at Miles, if you look at, Corey now, they're all posting content and they're at the top of the space. So like there is a theme that we can look at and we can kind of track towards a goal of being, an improved seller. And they're all doing this. So when I look at all of like the larger folks in the space, they are showing you a framework and you just have to follow that. And it's very
Right.
simple. There's a lot of like, limiting beliefs around like, people won't enjoy my content or whatever. I don't think I've had anybody be negative towards my content at any point. I can't remember a time.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it'll come. It'll
It'll
come.
happen. Yeah, eventually for sure. But it hasn't happened yet. But it's like everyone's super nice. Like,
Right.
especially when you're starting out, people want to be supportive.
Yeah, because you're in that sort of the intermediary space where it's like your audience is pretty much everyone who vibes with you. At
Yeah.
some point, you're gonna kind of reach that next sphere, which is
Yeah.
most of the people that vibe with you, and then there's a small piece of the pie, which is like, all right, well, screw this dude, like,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? The
But
bad energy.
that's kind of an indicator that you're doing something right,
Oh, big
I
time.
think. Yeah, like um if somebody's being negative to you, you have to think about why they're doing that, and it's something about them. It's not about you. If you're being
Right.
positive and just trying to help people, they can say what they want.
Kind of reflecting on your journey as we could start to wrap up here, can you attribute a particular maybe day or week or time period where you were like, oh shoot, like this is actually going to work. Like this is taking shape and this is like everything is sort of happening how I envisioned and how I expected.
Yeah, 100%. So I was actually on vacation in San Diego, and um I just had enough of kind of sitting on the sidelines, and I just on a whim signed up for the roadmap. Like that was the moment where I was basically pushing my chips in and saying like, this is going to work. I am going to make this work by any means necessary.
Right.
And I'm just going to start binging like the tactical information required to win. And that was like the moment I remember specifically.
And then after that, I think you've had a couple 10K days, 12K days, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Prime Day was crazy. Like I
Right.
think that was like 8 or 9. And yeah, that for sure is like the moment where I began to understand the velocity that products move. And then back to school just in general. I mean, because it was like multiple thousands of dollars a day for an extended period of time. And so that just really instilled confidence in me that we can go ahead into Q4 and it's not going to be less. It's going to more than likely be more. And so we can go deeper and we can really take advantage of that opportunity.
And so as we approach the busy time of the year, how are you approaching it, right? What's the next 6 months look like for you? Any shifts in business model, doubling down on what works, wholesale, different products? What does the next kind of 6 months look for you?
Yeah. So for me, maybe some wholesale next year. I think that I want to go through an entire year of OA because I still think there's going to be opportunities to take advantage of in the long run. And then I think taking the lessons learned from, back to school, Prime Day would be beginning to plan further out. And so having like making sure that my capacity is at a spot where it can handle all of the product I want to send in, and
Mhm.
taking care of that months in advance. Because that's actually a problem that I ran into in back to school is I ran out of space. And so it could have been a bigger month. I had some products sitting when it could have been moving. So just taking lessons learned and then, taking advantage of future opportunities.
And the other cool thing, right, when it comes to Amazon is we work in a revolving calendar. We work in a revolving year. And so part of that, the part of the value is all these seasons, all these days happen year after year after year. Right? So the hard work you put in this past September, November, whatever it was, well, a lot of the fruits of those labor are going to come back to benefit you next year and the year after, right? And so this is something we kind of urge a lot of people that we work with is to store all that information. Store, and I know you're giving a hard time. You're giving a hard time to someone in your squad about the buy sheet, right?
Oh yeah, Dre. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so that obviously pays dividends when it comes to like your everyday buys, but more importantly, the seasonal stuff, right? And so like say if you're buying a lot of Thanksgiving stuff this year, well, there's a good chance that Thanksgiving stuff will operate similar fashion next year, right? And so we learn and we iterate on this knowledge, on this information every year, right? We can go back in a lot of these seasonal stuff, the back to school stuff, the Thanksgiving stuff, the Easter stuff. Go back the past 5, 6 years, and the interesting thing is a lot of the buy boxes are going to rise to the same place. A lot of the sales ranks are going to drop to the same place. A lot of the time increments in terms of when things are happening operates at about the same cadence, right? And so if you just find some sort of way to organize this information, well, next back to school, you have 15, 20, 25, however many products you were selling of information of products and sellers that you can now use as a starting point to do your research next year to prepare and be better than this year, right?
Yep. Yeah, and I think that that's something that I'm looking to implement. Like, I'll probably start to build out like a little bit of a team. Make sure that we're doing those activities as things become more sophisticated, so that when we get to that moment, it's less work and you're taking fuller advantage for sure.
So as we wrap up here, for the person that's sitting at that 20,000, what's the one piece of advice that you can leave them or give them to in an effort to really try and push them towards that next threshold?
Yeah, so I think you just have to take action in like every area of your life. So if it's, being around people that you want to be like, go ahead and reach out to them on socials, try and provide value to them in some sort of way. And then that relationship will get onto a good foot and you can just really, grow together. I think the importance of group cannot be
Understood.
understated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Well, thanks, man. Thanks for joining me. I think we provide some good context and good value for the people. Where can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram and Twitter at Pete's Flips. I'm definitely more active on Twitter, but go ahead and drop me a follow and shoot me a DM. I'm always happy to help folks get started.
And then you recently started a podcast. Where can they tap
Yeah.
into those?
Yeah, we do. We have the Prep Talk podcast. That's on YouTube, Spotify, basically anywhere you can find a podcast. It's there.
My man, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep. Cool. Thanks, Garrett.